You're listening to Artist on Record, the podcast, your ultimate intimate conversations with your favorite rock and roll artists from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, exploring the music and sharing historic rock and roll stories with you. The podcast is available on platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Well, after 51 years, the original Alice Cooper Band is back with a brand new album. We have Dennis Dunaway, founding member bassist for the band. He's going to chat with us today about the new music and other great tales. Put your hands together for a rock and roll legend. It all starts now. Don't touch that dial.
I'll just watch you while you're sleeping, darling, and decide if I should bite.
Well, man, you know what? I'm glad you're here, and thanks for taking some time to talk with me and my audience. And The Revenge of Alice Cooper, the vinyl, that'll be coming out about July 25th. But this came out of nowhere. I'm like searching on my iPhone like everybody else. All of a sudden, I see original Alice Cooper Band. They have a record out, and of course, for people listening, I'm friends with Ryan Roxy, Alice's touring guitarist for the solo band. He doesn't say nothing to me, and I'm being honest with you. You know how people will talk, whisper behind the back, oh, it's a secret, it's this. Ryan is so scared of anything, he won't say nothing to ruin the gig. So if Alice, you're listening, Ryan is not like a mumbler or fumbler. He's loyal to you. So yeah, keep him as your henchman there, Alice. But nobody knows nothing. And then I'm seeing it's coming out of nowhere. There was no real advertisement, but just popped out of bam. So tell the audience.
If you have anything to do with the Alice camp, you know you better keep your cards close to your vest.
A rock and roll legend is right here in the hot seat. A founding member of the Alice Cooper group, Dennis Dunaway. Right?
But tell me about it. We've been keeping this a secret for 2 years now.
For 2
We're ready
years.
to explode. Yeah. This was supposed to be a secret for another month, but you know, the record company Ear Music in Germany sent out all of the promo stuff to various radio stations and magazines and everything, and then they were supposed to release certain things on each date, and then gradually release all of this promo stuff to lead up to the album release. So somebody in Australia released everything.
Wow.
So now all of the promos out all at once, and it throws off our strategy. But you know, still keeping a secret for this long, I'm so happy to finally be able to talk about it. Well,
here
you know,
it comes.
the real
But
miracle
you keeping
about
a
it
secret
is
for 2 years?
Michael
How
blabbed
the hell did you
early
do
on,
that?
way early on, and we managed to put the genie back in the bottle. and then Alice did a couple of interviews where his hints got a little heavy. And then A&E did a documentary about us and when we were recording in the recording studio. And I thought for sure that the cat was out of the bag at that point. But I think people are so sort of once bitten, twice shy, because over the years, the rumor of us doing an album has happened a couple of times and then it didn't happen. So I think that's what kind of saved it. Even still, I have people saying, is it really happening? Well, you know, have you looked at your computer lately?
It's happening. It's happening. And you know what? For everybody listening, I'll put 4 seconds of the single that's out now, Black Mamba, and links will be in the description. So you could pre-order the album right here. Check it out right here.
Come a little closer, darling. You've got nothing to fear.
Yeah. Double album, huh? It's a double album. A lot of songs on this one.
I know the song order of the songs that we recorded because I worked on it with Bob Ezrin and Max from Ear Music, the honcho there. And that was quite a job because we had a lot of songs that didn't really have necessarily a theme like some of our early days albums, but we juggled and juggled and juggled and finally got it into what I consider the perfect song order, where it goes along. It starts with the most unlikely song.
Come a little closer, darling.
And then it goes into a song that Bob Ezrin thought shouldn't be that close to the beginning of the album. And then as it turned out, it works great, as I had suggested. But the album goes along, and then by like 2/3 of the way through, all of a sudden it gets more and more and more Glenn Buxton. It's great. Glenn is definitely the spirit of Glenn is on this album, loud and clear.
Loud and clear. And that's what you wanted to come and capture that, bring him back, huh?
But he's always with us, but to make sure that it gets into the grooves, you know. So I got a call from Bob Ezrin and Alice like a couple years ago, and Alice and Michael and Neil had been out in Phoenix jamming together and stuff at Michael's studio, and they were starting to come up with some things that they liked. So Bob and Alice called me and said, "Hey, you know, Dennis, what do you think about doing an album?" I said, "Oh, well, you know, do you have an idea for a theme, or do you have idea for what style?" And you know, and they're like, "Well, we're thinking, you know, we've got a lot of, you guys have some songs, right?" I said, "I have about 30 songs, and Neil has about 30 songs. Not even talking about Michael yet. We already had enough albums for songs for a bunch of albums." But so Bob said, "Well, we'll listen to them, and we'll do the best of them." And I said, "Oh yeah, like the cream of the crop." And Alice and Bob started laughing hysterically. And I'm like, "What's so funny?" And they said, "Well, the phone cut out, but they thought I said cream of the crap." and, and they decided that was going to be the title of the album and everything. Past, like I said, this sounded like it was going to happen a couple of times over in the past decades, and Alice would be all on board, excited and everything, and then it wouldn't happen. So we've kind of learned to not pop any champagne until something really up. It's always like, you know, when we did the Christmas pudding, Alice, for the Solid Rock Teen Center out in Arizona, that Alice and his wife Cheryl are big participants in. You know, all of a sudden my phone, you know, blows up, and my incoming mail blows up, and everybody's, "Oh, Dennis is going to be out there," and I better call Alice, you know. So I don't always know. I'm not always the first to know when something's going to happen.
51 years since the original band, right? Recorded.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 74 was Muscle of Love.
Wow. And in that year, 73, 74, you did 2 albums in 1 year too, correct?
Well, we did Love It to Death and Killer the same year. We did, I think, I'm not real clear on all of this, but we were doing about 2 albums a year back then. But not only that, but unlike every other band in the world, we were also doing 2 theatrical shows. So we would change the show to go with the theme of the album.
Pressure, a lot of work.
Well, you know, let's face it, the Beatles set the bar high. Look how much they did in such a short period of time. That's back then. The thought was, as soon as your single had its run, you wanted to have something ready to go, and to the point where, you know, when fans talk to me about, "Oh, well, that was the Love It to Death era." Well, the fans' Love It to Death era was our Killer era, because we were already working on Killer.
What did I do today?
deserve such a fate.
Neil kept track of what date it was, I think because he's from Ohio, and my wife did because she wrote her daily diaries for
Hmm.
everything that happened. In fact, she's writing a book now, and she's going through all of those letters that her and Neil wrote home to their mother, telling her what's going on, and all of her daily diaries. And we're finding out stories that neither one of us remembered at all. It's going to be great.
Take you back. Here you are, 50 something years later, for the fans out there, but you did have kind of a reunion because a couple of years back, you and the OG guys did some live shows with Alice.
Yeah, well, like I said, we did the Christmas pudding a few times, including one, the most recent one, which is still going back quite a few years now. We had Joe Bonamassa and Johnny Depp playing guitars with us. And so little by little things came back together. But I think one of the big ones was this guy, Chris Penn, a bigger than life guy in Dallas, Texas, had a record store. And when I put out my book, Snakes, Guillotines, Electric Chairs, My Adventures in the Alice Cooper Group, he talked me into doing a book signing at his record store. And then he said he had a stage and would I be interested in playing some songs? And I said, oh, let me see if I can get Neil and Michael to come out. And then what I didn't know is Chris knew that Alice was going to be in town and that would be his day off. So then we talked Alice into doing this surprise appearance with us. And we played about 7 songs or so. Without any rehearsal at all. Just the sound check was basically Neil making sure the drums were tuned and me making sure the amp worked and that kind of a thing. And anyway, they recorded that. It was basically supposed to just be for Chris Penn to, on Monday morning, he could for him to believe that it actually happened. That's what he said. But the film and the recording came out so well that they made a movie out of it. So that was released, and the album was released, and Bob Ezrin helped whip the sound into shape. This guy, Stephen Gaddis in Texas, did the film. And that had a lot to do with it because now it's not just us sitting in with somebody, it's us, just the original group with actually Ryan Roxy sat in with us as well, who's always great, The tricky part about that is Ryan on stage with Alice usually plays Michael's guitar parts. So now Michael's involved. So now they had a little quick refresher to make sure they were going to be playing. He's going to be playing Glenn's parts. So of course Ryan figured that out really fast. But so then also my book, I think, helped bring people together. And obviously us, the original group, as opposed to Alice solo being inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2011, that brought us together because we performed there. So little by little, these things kept pulling the band back together, and it all led up to this finally.
Oh, Chris recently passed away.
Yeah, man, this one is a big blow to everybody that knew him, or even people that ordered records from his record store, because when it would arrive, he'd put so many extras in there. It was like Christmas. And he had a lot to do with getting a lot of bands, Polyphonic Spree, St. Vincent was a good friend of his, and Tripping Daisy, a lot of Texas people, in fact, I think it was St. Vincent that coined the phrase that everybody uses, thank God for Chris Penn.
Wow. Very cool.
So sad to have him gone. He fell off a ladder in his record store.
Is that what happened?
He was peeling a sticker off the front window to redo the window in the record store, and he fell off the ladder and landed on his back and ended up paralyzed from the neck down. And then while he was in the hospital, he got pneumonia and this and that. And even though his spirits were up, I mean, to the point where he was even planning record store day by people would point at letters on a board and he would blink his eyes if it was the right letter. And the first thing he communicated was order more records for record store day. And then he was even organizing a benefit concert to help pay for his medical bills. That concert, I hear, is still going to happen, once people mourn a bit, because it's a heavy blow.
That is,
But the spirit of Chris Penn will live on because he was such a positive guy, and he made so many things happen for other people.
I love your touch now, baby. I love to feel your skin. I wanna slide inside and hide before I do you in.
you guys, when you split up with each other, you guys went your own ways. Not even a split. You took a break, I guess. What's the story? You took a break,
Yeah,
Alice.
Yeah, I was totally against it. But yeah, I was totally against it. But the band always survives all the way through. Everybody had a say. And if there were two different points of view, then we would vote on it. And then we would always just go with the majority vote. And that was it. And so Michael decided he wanted to do a solo album because, as he said, he was frustrated with him bringing us a song, I Love You, and we turn it into I Want to Kick a Puppy or something,
King of America.
And so, I was totally, Michael, we fought all these years to make it to the top, and now we make it to the top, and you want to take a break? Come on. So, but he was pretty insistent. And so we were discussing it, and the point came up that Glenn and Alice both were so heavy into the bottle at that point that we thought, we were worried about them. And we thought, okay, well, to give them a chance to dry out and get out of a party every night kind of situation, it might be a good idea. So they talked me into it. And so Neil and Michael and I both kind of voted that way. Glenn kind of wasn't even participating in the votes at that point. And even Alice was saying he was tired of playing the Alice character and that he wanted to go into acting and stuff. And so I could see that my crusade to keep everything together was not going to work. And while Michael was recording his album, then Neil decided he was going to record some songs, and I told him I would play bass on it. But that wasn't because he was trying to do a solo career. That was only to keep our chops together during the break. Neil didn't even release that album until I think 1990 or something.
Listen to the thunder. Can't you hear the thunder?
But then when we came back together for the Battle Axe album, we designed this big giant show. It had these gladiators that would fight with guitars that had axe blades on them. This was before Gene Simmons, by the way.
You just took the words out of my mouth. I was going to ask you about that, but go on. I
This
don't want to
this
interrupt
was
you.
before Gene. In fact, I remember seeing Gene in the audience one night with this look on his face, and I thought, "Oh my God, he's going to steal another idea."
Because I don't want to disrupt the momentum of your story, but that bass I was having in my notes here was this created by this guitar maker Steve Carr in '78, but that axe bass was on the cover of Battle Axe before, and I was just talking to Eric Singer about this. I go, Gene took the idea. He just took it from them, had to. That's just my point of view. But
Yeah,
go,
well, artists, it's not like we never took
I know.
ideas from anybody, and more power to them. I love theatrical rock, so gung ho to them. Uh, but I designed the battle axe.
Mm,
I wanted it to be made out of plexiglass, the body, and then I wanted a jagged edge on the neck, strong enough to jam this thing into the stage and have it stand up on its own, which was tough because the plexiglass was very heavy. And so the jagged blade I designed was inspired by, the monkeys and Wizard of Oz. They
mhm.
had those spears with the kind of stylized points on the tip. So I kind of took that sort of an idea. But I went down to a plexiglass guy and he said, it can't be done. It's going to break. And I said, okay, how about if I pay you in advance, non-refundable, and you try to do it? And he did it perfectly. And then I went to a machine shop, this old Italian guy, to get the metal part cut out, and it had to have holes that fit over the tuning parts for a Stratocaster neck. And so I made the template and everything, and so while this guy cut that out, the entire time he was telling me that I should give up rock and roll because that's not where it's at. I should get into opera. But anyway, so yeah, I still have the battle axe. It's still not no chips or anything, but it had to be jammed. So the one point of the battle axe show, out from under Neil's drum riser, hydraulically, this boxing ring would come out, and the post would slowly raise up with velvet ropes and
Mm.
lock into place. And then the two gladiators would come out in these futuristic, shiny gladiator outfits and armored outfits, and they would fight it out. And then it was Michael Bruce and our guitar player at the time, Michael Marconi, and Michael would win. Marconi would fall, and he had to fall in exactly the same part of the stage because we had a piece of wood that was only about 8 inches square. And then Michael would take this battle axe, the real battle axe, off of its stand and go thumbs up or thumbs down to the audience, of course, thumbs down. And then he would jam it into the stage, and it would be between Mike Marconi's arm and his body. And this thing would stick in the stage and stay there. And then everybody would freeze, and the fog would roll out as this whole boxing ring and everything would roll back into the fog. And then we'd come out, popping champagne and graffiti and everything, and do this song called The Winner. So it was an elaborate stage show. We had to follow Billion Dollar Babies. Meanwhile, we're reading in the press that we had to be replaced because we refused to do theatrics. What?
That's crazy.
It was crazy, and nobody ever asked me to do an interview to talk about it. All they did is go with the spin.
That is crazy. That's crazy. So that was pretty much the break at that point for
Yeah, it took very, I was kind of naive about it in hindsight, but that's because uh, I was so uh, faithful that my best friend Alice and Shep, uh, there's no way the group was really breaking up. I was kind of last to finally come to that realization.
I'm comparing to a relationship. It's like Are you guarded when you come back in? Are you a little nervous? Are you really nervous how to be yourself? And you know what I mean?
No, not really. I mean, there was other factors. Me and Cindy going into New York City to visit Alice. And Alice and his wife bringing baby Calico over to our house for dinner and stuff like that. But and we never really, Alice and I never really engaged in anything about what happened and all of that. We just continued as friends because we didn't get all the lawyers. We got lawyers, but then we decided, Michael, Neal, and I, that hey, you know what? If we get lawyers, there'll never be a chance of us ever getting together again. And also, let's face it, that's not what this is about. This is a bunch of friends that had a dream and
Mhm.
achieved that dream, and let's not uh, let's not get all negative over it and everything. So that's, for better or for worse, there are people that say you're an idiot, you should have sued and all that, but
Yeah.
if
Everybody
we had
talking.
this great, in my opinion, it's a great coming back together. Us in the studio for this is just like us in the studio back then. It's a lot of humor, a lot of the same kind of input. If we're laying down a track or something and somebody says, oh, wait a minute, it sounds a little too fast. Neal, what's the tempo on that? And Neal would tell you and set the click and boom. So we knew who to go to for each person's expertise. And so it moved fast. And also, we were just a lot of laughs. I mean, it was just a blast.
The love is still there. And the memory of Glenn, you guys are keeping the spirit there as well. His spirit's in
Yeah,
the studio.
anybody that knew Glenn, his legacy looms large in your heart. His he was a one of a kind, and like when I wrote my book, I
Mm.
tried to capture Glenn as well as I could, but I'm thinking even back then, he would say so many things in a day that you think, oh my God, I've got to remember that. And at the end of the day, there's too many to remember. And that was a daily thing. So, of course, that's missing in the studio if he's not there. But the rest of us have kind of picked up on it enough that we can kind of throw out Glennisms, you know.
Of
Yeah,
course.
and combine and the combination of all of us, we can kind of keep that spirit going.
I only heard the first track and I was like trying to really go down the, I'm trying to see if there's any sneaky leaks out there, all this, all that. I couldn't find anything, just me personally. So I'm just trying to go down the rabbit hole. The song, What About Sid? What is that song about? Correcting myself, What a Sid. It's
What
yes.
is it? That's
Yeah.
something Glenn always would say. Like if you did something stupid, if somebody was in a room and they went to sit down and the chair tipped or something, he'd go, "Ah, what a Sid." And it had nothing to do with Sid Barrett. He said it before we do Sid Barrett. But so that was a common thing that Glenn would say. And so this song began from a jam that I did at the Gillespie Estate, where the Alice
Mm.
Cooper group lived together in Greenwich, Connecticut. And this jam probably happened in 1973 because it was Ainsley Dunbar on drums and our keyboard guy, Bob Dolan, on keyboards. And then it was just me on bass playing this riff that I wanted to lay down, and they decided they would help me. So then later on, I wrote lyrics to it, which were pretty Alice Cooper and pretty bizarre, about just this wacky jazzy nightclub that had this weird guy that was a regular there. All these different characters that were described that all hung out in this bar, and uh, and then we decided Alice decided that it should be about Glenn. So he rewrote the lyrics to my melody, and that's what it is. It's a song about Glenn.
Uh, Great, fantastic. What now? People? Some fans will say Sid Barrett. Is there a story in Alice Cooper, Pink Floyd story? Is there any stories about you
Yeah,
cats?
because they stayed at our house on their first tour. They came over and we had a house in Santa Monica at the time. And Pink Floyd came over and they stayed at our house. But at that time, Sid was not functioning well. It was very, very sad. Uh, David Gilmour was with them and they had to cancel the tour. They did a couple of shows, but uh, I attended one of them. Uh, Sid came out to the microphone and he looked like he got shocked on the microphone and then he froze for the rest of the set.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean they still managed to sound great despite it. I mean, I think he did play a bit, but uh, but they definitely had issues and they were discussing what to do about it. And David Gilmour was, all their a friend of all of them, and I think he was even in early Pink Floyd
Yeah.
before before Sid, or with Sid, but before he became the official guitar guy.
Sid Barrett. What an interesting cat, huh? What a-
I was sitting in our dining room, uh, and I was having a conversation with him, and I thought artistic music ideas and sort of pushing the abstract and all of that. And I thought, oh my God, my hero here is really locked into what I'm saying. And then I realized he was just staring off into space. He wasn't even there.
Wasn't even there.
It hit me hard.
Wow. Wow. The crazy. Yeah. I just always the mind of him, I'm always like interested. Actually, what would it be like to be in a room with him? You just answered my question. So there you go. So
Yeah. Well, Piper at the Gates of Dawn, man, we wore that album out. We sent away and got a copy early on because Alice and I had seen an interview with Paul McCartney, and they asked him if there were any other British bands that were up and coming, and he
mhm.
mentioned Pink Floyd. So we sent off to England and ordered a copy of the album.
You got the official Paul McCartney, okay. He
Yeah,
gives the green light and then okay.
that's a thumbs up,
That's a thumbs up. Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Um, so we got now the record will be coming out. You have this single coming out. Will there be another single after this one that you guys are
Uh,
releasing? You're not
I think it's pretty safe to say that since everything's been leaked early, that there'll be another single, maybe two, before the album comes up.
okay. Okay.
They plan that by whatever. They don't want to step on a single if it's getting action, but let's face it, this is classic rock, and where does a new classic rock song get played? Nowhere.
Nowhere. Nowhere.
But you know what? It's kicked in. The pre-orders for the album were on Amazon,
Yeah.
number one in England, Germany, and America, and several categories and other places in the world. So it's really the the sales pre-orders are on fire.
You know what? As a fan now, let's take me out of interviewing you or knowing people close to the camp. As a fan, looking on the internet, these people are going crazy. There's reaction videos. There's young kids. Excuse me. There's young kids making reaction videos. I can't wait. The guy could have been like maybe not even 21. I can't wait. The original Alice Cooper band is back together. What does this mean? Are they going to go on tour? I can't wait to hear this. And especially Dennis, your bass playing is such it's like this the John Entwistle of the Who, you with the Alice Cooper band. You can't, other people can't, and I'm not knocking anybody. So Chuck, Garrick, if you're listening, I'm not knocking nobody, but we
We
can't
love you,
imitate.
Chuck.
We love you, Chuck. but we cannot imitate Dennis. And you have a sound. I remember even playing one of those Christmas puddings and listening to your bass lines. I'm like, oh my God, it's like how I'm like a bad version of him. And I play like a Dee Dee Ramone. It's gonna be like hell. I was spending hours trying to dissect your your tone, your thing, just everything you play. I don't have to tell you, you know already. Come on, everybody knows. And everybody listening knows how great you are. But what I'm getting at here, the fans are excited. They want to see. There's not many bands anymore that are going out 50 something years. You guys are above ground. You're here, right? This is a celebration. What about a tour now? What about a tour?
Well, that's what everybody's asking me, but they don't believe me when I say I haven't heard anything about it because they just think it's another secret being kept.
Now, when you walk in the
But
room, there's Dennis. He won't say nothing.
but I will tell you, honestly, I haven't heard anything concrete about a tour. I have heard or read an interview where Alice was saying that he sees maybe us doing major cities, small clubs in major cities or something, but talk is one thing, and getting the real deal phone call is another. So whatever. I mean, it's always been the same.
Yeah.
It's always been Neil and Michael and I, all it takes is a phone call and we're there. So all of these years, it's always been like that.
It's very exciting. I thought, going down on the internet, seeing Alice play with Priest, like, oh, is the original band going to play with Priest? And then I try to, chat to Ryan, but he won't answer me. So that's a thing that I wanted to know. I'm like, oh, that'd be great. The OG guys, with
Well, there's a lot of, there's a lot of expense. I mean, Alice's touring band, all of those people are not only great people, but they're multi-talented, uh, and then the stage and all of the equipment and the roadies, to all of a sudden say, oh, okay, we're going to go with this other thing for a month. All of those people are waiting, and all of that equipment is being expensively stored, so there's things like that. But if enough fans make a big enough splash, and everybody telling me, I get 100 people a day telling me, hey, why don't you tour? Well, hello, you're preaching to the choir here. Go tell somebody that's in charge of letting me join in.
yeah.
Uh, but I imagine we'll be doing some things, but I it's a stretch for me to think that we would be doing a major tour. But it all has to do with the fan outcry. If promoters are convinced that they can make more money with us, then we did the tour in 2017. We did 5 shows in England with Alice. That was the touring band did the brunt of the show, and then we came out for the encore and did 6 or 7 songs, and then it was all hands on deck for Schools Out for the grand finale. But that only happened because there was a promoter in England that was willing to pay the extra to add us to that show. Um, but we sold out Wembley. And the last time we played Wembley in 72, we sold it out.
Wow. Wow. I mean, come on. I mean, legendary. You guys, I mean, I got to tell you, Dennis, right here. I hope you guys do something because it'd be wonderful to see the OGs out there. There's not many out there anymore. And I start thinking like who's around? I mean, everybody's retiring and that's it. And
Oh,
Alice still sounds, you know, great. He still sounds great. He still looks the same. The guy, I don't know what potion he drank, but it's still the same guy. And he puts
he
on a
still
great
looks the
show.
same, but well, let's face it, Keith Richards manages to still look good despite how he really looks.
But
But
it
but
works.
with the Alice character, it's almost like age wrinkles and stuff only adds to the character.
It's you know what, he was so ahead of his time inventing, creating, you guys creating that whole concept. It really was ahead of its time. Now I've been following, there's a guy that when I first started my podcast, and before I got the legends on like you and Dion DiMucci on here, I have to drop the names, or John
I love
Sebastian.
Dion, and that was a great show that you did with him.
Oh, thank you so much. The real show is about 2 hours. At 30 minutes, he took a liking to me, and I was just
Ah, great.
he was just a beautiful cat, a beautiful soul, and I grew up with his music. I have a
Me
lot of
too.
great, yeah. I love. 40 doo wop was a big thing of mine, Dennis. Little Anthony is, I have to call him back. I did 4 hours of him with
Oh, how cool is
of him
that?
writing with Sam Cooke under the Apollo, and he's a beautiful soul. And I have to give a shout out to my friend Kenny Vance. He's the one who believes in me and believes in my channel, and he's introduced me to all these greats. And Kenny Vance was from Janie American, so the
Yeah, how
originals
cool is that? And Chubby Checker is now inducted.
in the
That's
Hall of
pretty
Fame.
cool.
Finally,
You
finally.
know how he got his name? Dick
How
Clark. Dick Clark said, "You need a name like Fats Domino."
is that how he got it?
Yeah.
Dick. Wow.
Excuse me.
No, it's okay. Wow, interesting. Are you a big doo-wop fan yourself?
I was.
You
50s was, tugging at my heartstrings, and at that age, I'm so lonely for a woman, but I don't know it yet.
uh,
And all of those 50s songs. Now, my wife, Cindy, she hated the 50s. She thought, oh my God, everything's black and white, and everything's, she does not like doo-wop. But
oh,
but me, in the still of the night, I just remember being chosen for the spotlight dance at the grade school that I was in, and this girl who was actually was my next door neighbor, but I was afraid to talk to her because I thought she was such a beauty. She reminded me a lot of Annette Funicello,
hmm
on the Mickey Mouse Club. Annette, developed as from a little girl to a young lady right in front of America. Everybody
those
watched her
beach
boobs
movies.
grow. And anyway, so at this dance at grade school, here comes this girl comes and chooses me. It was Lady's Choice, and she chooses me. And the song In the Still of the Night, it was like, oh my God, I'm dancing with her, and everything was like those slow motion scenes in a movie, where all of my friends are slowly going past in the background while I'm all dreamy eyed and everything.
That's fantastic.
So that to me, that is doo-wop. I mean, it had that effect.
It's part of our life. It's a part of the memories, and it goes with the stories of our lives. These songs, they're fantastic. It's
That's the
fantastic.
wonderful thing about music. It's you attach it to things. It can help you through bad times. It can help you through good times, and it's
And this,
that's that's all I know how to do, really.
and it's fun talking with you because from the Alice Cooper world, this shock rock world where people, hear this, this world, but it's great to hear your influences, the other stuff that people might not know that Dennis really grooved to and, made you who you are as a musician today. So I like hearing
Well,
that.
country music I grew up with because that's all my dad would allow in the house or in the car. Uh, so, but that was to the point where I didn't like it. I was rebelling against that because I wanted to be a rocker, because in 63 I saw Dwayne Eddy and the Rebels play at a movie theater, and I said, "Wow, that's what I want to do." So I got to the point where I really didn't like country, especially that steel guitar. I thought,
Mhm.
oh, it sounds so pessimistic all the time. And but now I look back on it, because my dad passed away,
Mhm.
and it's not being forced on me anymore. And now I go, oh my God, Hank Williams, wonderful, and Johnny Cash, wonderful. I
Uh,
love all of it.
You know, when we go back, when I was talking with Dion, like I was really shocked. Like he was really influenced by Hank Williams. I'm like back in
Yeah.
Brooklyn, who's like really listening to this stuff? And
Yeah. See, I've been a Dion fan since way back then and still am. And so I learned something on your show because I never knew that before either.
oh, that's cool. That's cool. And that was just a natural conversation like you and I have. And that's, you know, getting the time and having people like you spending the time to have a
So
conversation.
my regret is when we were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the ceremony at the Grand Ballroom at the Waldorf Astoria, New York City, Dion was there. And, you know, I never ask somebody if I can do a selfie with them or get their autograph, you know, but it was Dion. And I went up and asked him if he would mind. And he agreed to do a picture with me. And then my phone was dead. And so somebody said, "Oh, that's okay. I'll take the picture and then you give me your email and I'll send it to you." So we did that. And I never got the picture.
You never got the picture.
No.
Nothing.
So I'm going to tag him again sometime. I know Christine Ullman, the Beehive Queen from
Mhm.
SNL. She's a good friend, and she does things with Dion. They have this great song, "Cry Baby Cry," that they a duet that they did together. But she's in touch with Dion a lot. I think she interviewed him uh, about his new book. But anyway, I'm going to maybe see if I can network through her and get my picture with Dion.
So if you had a message right now, what would you say to Dion right this second?
Oh my God. I would say Dion is the coolest of the coolest.
You know what? I'm gonna make this happen for you. All righty, Dennis. I owe you because you came on my show before when you didn't have to, and this is how it all runs. The train comes down.
I'm going to end up with a lot of pictures.
You're gonna end up with a lot of pictures. All right. I'll clip it here. He wrote back to me, and I couldn't believe it. Took me 2 years to get him. 2 years. I had Joe Bonamassa on 2 years. I was writing to the management, and then one day somebody hit my link. They made an appointment. I thought it was a bad joke, and then Dion came on. I'm like, come on! And through the whole time, when that interview you saw, there's more clips. I don't know if you saw the others. I didn't send to you. I probably will. He talks about Phil Spector.
Yes, and the
I'll send it to you. And I go, Dion, I'm a little nervous here. He goes, so am I. And he goes, I like you. And we had a connection. So I threw all the notes on the side, and that was it. He actually wrote back to me. He goes, you're the greatest. Loved doing the interview. And I was like, oh my God, from his email. And I was like, wow, Dion wrote back to me. So that was the closest I could get. I'm not going to be able to speak to Buddy Holly, John Lennon, and Dion, but I got Dion. He's alive, you know, and he's here,
Yeah,
and
and
it
still knocking out songs
still
and
kicks ass.
good ones too.
He still kicks ass. He still kicks ass. Now let's go back because I don't want to take up all your time. You got to come back. You got to come back again. Maybe I could do one with you, me and Dion.
Well,
Okay.
that's what you said last time, and I'm back.
I'm back. Well, I didn't offend you. I got you back, so I'm glad. Me and you, thank you, Ryan. Um, I got to ask you. So Ryan, I thought Ryan was going to be a part of this album, right? And I'm texting him 2 days before. I go, "Are you on this?" Not answering me. Ryan's being very, those guys, the monkeys, see no evil, hear no evil. He's good at that. Anyway, I look online and there's a cat that I was following for a long time, and I was going to have him on my show, but then I got sidetracked. Emails, you forget. A guy named Gyasi. And I'm like, this guy is like the perfect glam guy. When Ryan and I did this band Glam Nation, I go, he would have been our Eric Dover, like, because we had a band with Eric Dover, Eric Singer. So anyway, all of a sudden I see he made a post. He's on the record. And then I copied the picture. I send it to Ryan. I go, you knew and you didn't tell me. He goes, I didn't know anything. Gyasi, talented cat. Anybody listening, great player. Looks like he could be in the early Alice Cooper band. How did this cat come to you guys? That's what I want to know.
It early on in us talking about doing the album, then of course we started talking about what guitar player we wanted, and I had my choice and Neil had his choice and Michael had his choice and like that. And then it turned into Alice saying, "Oh, let's get Slash for this, and let's get, Joe Bonamassa for that," and all. And we're going, you know what? It's going to turn into another Alice album where it's just you know, a parade of guitar players. So Bob Ezrin said, "Okay, I'm going to settle it. I've got this guy," and uh, and so Neil and I went down to Nashville and actually went in the studio. Alice was there and Shep was there, and we laid down a couple of tracks with Gyasi. And I thought, oh my God, he's really good, but I'm not so sure that he's the right guy to replace Glenn because of the guitar style. So and Neil kind of felt the same. We really liked him. He's the most polite, gentlemanly, Southern gentleman guy, even though he's, I can't remember what country he's from originally, but anyway, so Neil and I went down to his show in Nashville. He's got a great band, and the show started out with Gyasi sitting, just dressed like normal, and sitting on a stool by himself. Well, the drummer was in the dark, just keeping a bass drum beat, but Gyasi did Delta blues, the real authentic sounding stuff, him singing and playing guitar. And then he had various guitars. He had a dobro for a couple songs and even a cigar box guitar. So it was really authentic sounding and great. He's really good. And then after that, then he goes in the back room. Next thing you know, he comes out and it looks like an outfit that David Bowie would wear, and total command of the audience. The band looks and sounds great. Their music sounds a lot like glam. I mean, early Bowie and a lot of T-Rex mixed in there. But it's like Neil and I are like, all right, I get it now. Bob is right. This guy can not only the looks, but the playing ability. So that was a go. When we actually were in the studio here in Connecticut to record the brunt of the album, this was before we had decided to use Gyasi. So a lot of that was it was Michael, Neil, Alice, Bob Ezrin, and I, and our friend Rick Tedesco, who worked with the Dennis Dunaway project and who works on a lot of Neil's solo records, the Killsmith stuff. And we've worked with Rick a lot, and so we were very comfortable with that. And also, he's a really fast learner, and also he doesn't come in trying too hard, which that's my experience working with different guitar players over the years. It takes a while for them to settle down because they'll come in and go, "Oh, it's Alice Cooper, my heroes," and it turns into Wheedly Wee. It's like you're trying too hard.
Yeah. Yes.
You gotta, take it back a notch.
It,
But so that's how that went down. Rick is on the album. We kept his parts that we did. He was there basically to just help us lay down the tracks because Michael hadn't heard a lot of the songs, and we had always worked with two guitar players, so he came in to help us out with that. But he's stellar. There's a song on the album that I wrote called "Blood on the Sun,"
mhm.
and that guitar solo is just, in my opinion, perfection. And that's Rick Tedesco.
Pretty cool. And then you have another cat that's on the record because you mentioned about all these all stars that bring Bonamassa, Slash, but you did allow Mr. Robbie Krieger come on the album.
So this song, Black Mama, I'm talking about all the songs that Neil and I submitted and Michael. But when we were in the studio, Neil said, "Hey, Michael, you got this jam that we jammed on at your house. That's really cool. Let's play that, and that turned into Black Mamba. So we were just like in the old days where, I have a song that I want to present to the band, but all of a sudden, forget that. Let's write a song, and like I mentioned, there was a point where we were thinking of different guitar players on every song. Well, that song immediately, Robbie Krieger's perfect for this with the slinky snake kind of stuff. Are you kidding? Listen to any Doors album and you'll hear that. But that one stuck big time because we've worked with Robbie. He's played on Blue Coupe albums.
Mhm.
And he worked on the Imaginos album, the Blue Oyster Cult Imaginos, that Albert Bouchard recorded. Well, Robbie worked with him back in those days. And I'd go into New York City to shows that Robbie and Ray were doing and go
So cool.
backstage and hang out. We became friends way back. The Doors and Alice Cooper played at the Cheetah Club, and it was an all-day Lenny Bruce
Wow.
kind of a benefit thing. And we played 3 sets that same day. We started in the afternoon and then later in the evening and then nighttime show. And so backstage hanging out with the Doors, we became friends, and they'd come over to our house or we'd go out to some Mexican bar and drink and stuff like that.
So drinking with Jim, huh? You drink with
Uh,
Jim.
yeah, well, mostly Glenn Buxton and Jim were drinking
What
buddies.
what was
They,
that like from afar to watch those two guys together?
well, they both went on to drink maybe more than they should have. But yeah, so Glenn always liked to say there was this Mexican food restaurant that we couldn't afford to go there to eat. We'd walk all the way across from Topanga Canyon. It's like maybe, I'm not kidding, 21 miles to walk all the way up to where the Capitol Records building is. It's still there.
Yeah.
Back then, there was right across the street this little taco stand that you could feed a family of 5 and get change from $1, and it was great. So we'd walk all the way there. But this other restaurant, we couldn't afford their prices, but Glenn always would brag, "Oh yeah, I taught Jim how to drink." So I told him, well, we can't. Even the Doors were kind of in our category of budget, in those days. Even though their songs were all on the radio, they still
Funny.
weren't rolling in the
Hmm.
dough. But so Glenn said, "Yeah, so Jim, sit at the bar, and they keep bringing you chips and salsa, so you don't waste your money on food. You can buy more drinks." And the other story Glenn always told is that Glenn had swiped this sweater from his girlfriend's apartment, and Jim Morrison always would go there too. And the girlfriends assumed all these years that Jim stole that sweater that he wore on the cover of Waiting for the Sun. But Glenn says he's the one that stole the sweater. And they were in this bar drinking, and all of a sudden Jim Morrison remembered, "Hey, wait a minute, I've got a photo session. I've got to get out to the beach, and I don't even have time to go home and get dressed. I don't have anything to wear." And Glenn took the sweater off and said, "Black is always cool," and gave the sweater to Jim, and he's wearing it on that album cover.
Wow. Wow. Very cool. Very cool. I love these stories, man. They're great stories back in the day. Yeah. People don't realize that, huh? The bands you guys weren't running. It wasn't like the money was running in for you cats, right? And it was just pure rock
Well,
and roll
well,
back
they had
then.
hits on the radio at the time. We didn't. We just had a record deal with Zappa that, we barely made the charts. So there was a major difference in our potential to make money. But you know, they were the local LA band. There was 3,000 bands there or musicians there at the time, all trying to make it. So I think with the Doors, from from us, what I gathered from knowing them, they didn't quite realize how big they were in the beginning. You
I
know,
don't, yeah.
they're LA in particular, you know, San Francisco called LA the plastic people, and you know, in LA's eyes, San Francisco were the overly groovy people, you know, and there was kind of that uh, uh, competition. But uh, LA was all peace and love, love-ins with bubbles and girls with see-through blouses and no bra and flowers in their hair, dancing around GTOs and all that. Uh, and everything was very positive. And then Charles Manson happened, and everything changed overnight. And because of that, that dark mood, the Doors became the soundtrack for LA, big time. They played the Doors a lot, and it was just so fit the mood so perfectly. You know, but Robbie Krieger is uh, you know, a shoe in for the feel on that song, Black Mamba. You know, I do the bass part, so I recorded that at home and sent it. Bob Ezrin suggested, "Hey Dan, why don't you record a creepy bass part for the intro on this jam that we did?" I said, "Oh, okay." So I composed something and I sent it to him. And he said, "Oh no, I was thinking of something. You know, can you do something creepier?" So basically, I just added a bunch of echo to it and sent it back to him, and he goes, "Oh, perfect, thanks." You know.
So you're kind of taking in that end of the '60s era from when the '60s got dark too. Now with the creepy part, with the Manson, the whole change of the gods in that now. It's
Well, you know, the Alice Cooper group, our first big, we did the Halloween dance at
mhm.
Cortez High School. Alice and I got white clothesline and made spider webs, and we got the girls in class to make paper mache tombstones, and Alice and I got a refrigerator box and cut it up and taped it back together and painted it to look like an old coffin. And we even had a guillotine.
It's
That was the
crazy.
Halloween dance, Pit and the Pendulum Halloween dance.
Hmm.
That was the very first show we actually did, a whole full set.
Ahead of your time, you guys.
Yeah, so we always loved all of that creepy stuff. But
I
you
do
know,
too.
Robbie's slide on that Black Mamba, that it'll send chills up your spine every time.
Oh, it's
And
incredible.
the other reason Robbie was chosen is because him and Glenn were such good friends.
Mm. That's a good fit. Good compliment to Glenn. Amazing, first of all, on that. I just not to go off track when you talk about the Manson and that whole scene because you were there in L.A. So crazy. And I go down the rabbit hole with all this stuff because I want to go to the locations and see. I actually walked to where Spawn Ranch was and where the Manson people they took the picture by the water, the little water over there. And it's weird now. You know, the grounds are now owned by a church. It's so weird, eerie. It's so crazy.
Wow, I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
And where the La Bianca house was, right next door is like a church bought the grounds and they own that as well. It's so weird, eerie, and the story never gets old. A really quick story. I'll tell you really quick because the Baked Potato, owned by Don Randy from the Wrecking Crew, it's a jazz club. I would jam every Tuesday night there, and Don told me a crazy story because, as you know, Manson, Dennis Wilson, they were all there was a connection because of Terry Melcher. There's a photograph that Don told me he had. They're playing, I think it might be at the Potato, and there was a mirror. And in the mirror, you could see Don is playing his keyboards. He was the keyboardist on all those great Beach Boys records and whatnot. Um, you could see the reflection. You see Terry Melcher, Dennis Wilson, and Manson watching Don play. It's pretty wild.
Well, Dennis Wilson went up there a lot.
The girls and all that. He invited Manson in his house. You know.
Well, I guess it didn't seem as bad as it was until it was.
It wasn't. You have any run-ins with any Beach Boys while you were in LA doing your thing? Any Dennis Wilson?
No, not really. We loved them. I mean, it seems like they were, you had Chuck Berry play guitar and Little Richard played piano, but generally back before the Beatles came out, there was very few bands that played their own equipment or instruments and the Beach Boys were, and Brian Wilson was a thumber. He played with his thumb.
Right, that's right.
I was a thumber when I began, just because that was one of the only people I saw play bass on TV, at the time. No, we never ran into them. We used to run into, David Crosby and some of the Laurel Canyon people, but the way we dressed, there was another thing in LA back then. You were a hippie or you were a freak. And you wouldn't want to make the mistake of calling a hippie a freak, But the hippies wore patchouli oil and had beads and fringed leather and were more earthy.
Mm-hmm.
And the freaks were more, I don't think Frank Zappa assigned himself as the leader of the freaks, but he was, so you had the GTOs and Alice Cooper and Captain Beefheart. And this guy, Vito and his dancers. Vito supposedly had an art school, which basically was all of the young runaway women that came to LA. Then he'd say, "Oh, well, come and be in my art school." And then they would go out. It was like that, what something, a name is slipping my mind here. Kim Fowley.
Okay.
Kim Fowley was part of the dancers. They would show up at different gigs. So if you were doing a gig and Vito's dancers came into the room, they totally took over the place. But it was a feather in your cap that they thought you were cool enough for them to bless you with their thing. And it would be like Kim Fowley, who was very tall, and then Pamela Miller back then, was short. And they were a couple in Vito's dancers. He would spin around with his hands behind his back with, a $20 bill or whatever in his mouth, in his teeth. And she would be dancing around, jumping up, trying to get the bill. He would be bobbing and, and then they would always be going in this big circle, all of these dancers. And then Vito would just stand there and grab them as they came by and just slide them across the floor into a pile, like he's bowling with girls.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but Vito's dancers was a big part of the freak scene.
Oh my goodness. How funny. How funny. Now your time in LA, man, what a fantastic time. When you look back at it, was a colorful time. The music, it really was.
It was a very colorful time. When you walk down the Sunset Strip, a car couldn't drive down there. It was full of people. Mm-hmm. It was, and everybody was dressed to kill. It was like Mardi Gras, and the Birds would be over here and Love would be over there and the Doors over here. It was like really, really happening scene. Of course, we couldn't afford to go into any shows or to eat. we were just there all starry-eyed. As a band that, back in Phoenix, we had the very first song Alice and I wrote together, Don't Blow Your Mind, went to a number 11 on AM radio in Tucson, Arizona. So we were a pretty big fish in a little pond out in the Southwest, touring around as the spiders.
Yeah.
But when we came to LA and saw the scene on Sunset Boulevard, we're like, oh my God, we've got a long way to go. Let's we migrated there slowly. The first time we went, we all jumped in a van, drove to LA, and we didn't have enough money for a hotel. We didn't know anybody, so we actually slept on the benches in Griffith Park.
Wow.
I'm not kidding. And then
Wow.
in the morning, we're thinking, oh, well, we're pretty hungry, see what change we had in our pocket because we didn't plan ahead or anything. So we're walking down the path down toward where civilization was from that park. And, we went up to where James Dean had the scene with all
Rebel
that.
without a cause. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we're walking down, we came to different parking lots at different levels. And we came to a parking lot, and there was a guy with, what we called a roach coach. It was sandwiches fresh daily truck. And the guy was throwing out the previous day's sandwiches into a garbage bin. And so here we come, and we push skinny Vince up front, and we go up and we just keep watching the guy, and he'd look at us and then he'd throw another handful in and look at us. And then finally he said, okay, boys, go ahead. You can have them. And we moved in like locusts.
He sent Alice up there. There he goes. Send him up there. It's funny. These are great stories. I can't get enough of these stories. And you're so right about LA. The tradition of Mardi Gras, it was like that when I went to Los Angeles right before grunge hit. And when I decided to move back to LA with me and Ryan, he had a band, Electric Angels, which Tony Visconti produced, but that band broke up. So by the time Roxy and I moved back to Los Angeles, I remember visiting and go, oh my God, I felt like this is it. This is like I belong. You couldn't walk on Sunset. It was Mardi Gras. It was all the freaks, all the girls. I go, this is it. And it felt like a safe zone. Oh, you could hang out. You could sleep on a couch. You'll get by. It felt the sun is out. And when I moved there, it all ended because I moved there right when Nirvana came out. It went whoosh, really quick. It ended, you
Yeah,
know.
I mean, that's a great thing about different eras, styles, and music. It's like this week's flavor. It's like Dick Clark with his. It's like, what are the kids like this week?
Mhm.
And it's like all of a sudden, so the young generations have to have their own. We can't. Okay, well, glam rock or theatrical rock or shock rock, that's now our parents' music. We need our own, so I'll tell you one thing for sure. We never would have been caught dead in a plaid shirt.
I
So,
know.
so grunge comes along, and the Sonics, that movie Boom, the
Mhm.
Sonics, so great. All of that stuff is coming out of Seattle, Heart, Pearl Jam, all of these different things, and it had its own thing, which uh, I don't know if I should be proud of that, only because I was born in Oregon, which is the same kind of country.
Mhm.
But a lot of plaid shirts in Oregon too.
I, I, well, it's funny because, and I'll send you some clips of some stuff I've done. I I'm in California now, but I have a home I own in Tacoma and in Gig Harbor, Washington, because when
Oh,
COVID
okay.
happened, I love Gig Harbor, but I still, I want to be back. My family's, I'm an East Coast guy. Anyway, I was doing these interviews, and this is after you and I were on the show. I go, I want to see what Aberdeen is like. I want to see where the guy that took down the Sunset Strip, I want to see what's there, because that's like the Liverpool for some people. Like, oh, I gotta go. For the Nirvana people, like that's their Lennon, Kurt Cobain. For some people. So
Right.
anybody listening, don't get offended. Dennis and I, just don't get offended. But so I go there and I'm just walking. You can see the house he was born in, and it's a lumber neighborhood. It's actually scary. It's like Walking Dead there. And this guy comes up to me, and He goes, "Are you a Nirvana fan?" I'm filming the Kurt Cobain Memorial Park where he used to hide under the bridge, sleep, run away, whatever. And I go, "Kind of." And he goes to me, "I was the original drummer." And it turned out he was the Pete Best of Nirvana. He was the first drummer.
Oh, okay. I've read about that guy. Yeah.
And I got him on video and I didn't believe him. I go, "I'll give you $20. Talk to me." He goes, "Yeah." I go, "But if you're not the guy, I'm going to look for you." I'm from Brooklyn. And my wife goes, "What are you harassing people?" But I got it was turned out to be the real guy. And he goes, I go, "You're like the Pete Best." He goes, "That's what they call me." And then a guy across the water yells, "Hey, Aaron." When he got the $20 from me, he was like off the cop or whatever he was going to do. "All right, just take that was it. I'll send you the clip." But this is great. But these great stories are great to talk with you, to share with people. What I'm getting at here now, music and rock and roll, there was a community. And I feel like it's lost. Like there was a community, whether you were in Los Angeles in the 60s, New York in the 70s, the Max's Kansas City days, the 80s, even went to Limelight. There was always a community. Sunset Strip, I feel like it's
Uh,
gone.
some of it, I mean, the Alice Cooper group moved like a gang
Hmm.
as safety in numbers because having long hair was dangerous back
Yeah.
then in Arizona. I mean, we would be, Alice and I were long distance runners, and we'd be running down the road, and a pickup would come off the road and try to hit us, stuff
It's,
like that.
it's like the Allman Brothers, where and where they grew up. It was the same for them. They weren't accepted.
Well, even I even go back to Elvis, early Elvis, he would get just because he wore pink shirts and had hair that, yeah. So I think the flip side of that coin is so now we become off stage or even not even doing music, we would go everywhere together. If we went to get a pizza, we'd go as a group. If we were at an airport, we'd move as a group to the point where, like, in 72, Cindy and I, the band was in Holland. And I'm saying, you know what? Every time we go to a party or anything, the rest of the guys are all there. Even though we heard about a party and we went, and then everybody else is there. And it was happening so much, it was getting like eerie. And so we're in Holland and Amsterdam. We decided, okay, we're going to really go off on this side street and go down here and explore and find something on our own. And not that we didn't enjoy being with the other guys, we just thought we'd do this. And we're going down this little tiny street, and we walk past a restaurant, and the guys are inside. It's like, wait a minute.
You guys really were like the Jets, West Side Story. You were a gang. It was like that, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we weren't as tough as the gang in West Side Story, and we also couldn't do a pirouette. But we got Michael mostly because he had a truck so he could move equipment, but also he had played football in high school. And after John Tatum quit the group, he was the guy that was, if somebody said, "Are you a boy or are you a girl?" they wouldn't finish the sentence before they were laying on the pavement looking up at him. uh, so so then we thought, okay, well, Michael's a football guy, so that'll be good. But, then we got Neil in the band. Glenn and Neil were Ohio guys. And those two were friendly, whatever. But if something started going wrong, they'd open up a can of Ohio whoop ass on them.
Those are tough guys. Let me tell you something. You need a tough. I'm a guy who run the other way. So you and Vince were the runners, and then you had those guys who were the
Alice,
tough guys.
Alice and I were the negotiators.
Alice is a good negotiator. He's
Yeah,
great. He
yeah.
hands down, hands down.
All of a sudden, if somebody's going to beat us up, next thing you know, he's on their side.
He is that guy. What about playing poker, Alice? Are you a poker player like him?
I wasn't because I was too busy. I looked at things like that as a waste of time because I was too busy thinking of a new song or the next thing we needed to do. But no, Neil, Glenn, and Alice were the poker players, and but they played a lot of blackjack on the
Mhm.
airplanes, or whether it was a commercial plane or when we had our own plane. But Neil would always insist on being the dealer because the dealer had the advantage.
Oh, that's the tip right there, I
Uh,
guess.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, they played a lot of poker, mostly blackjack though. That was the popular game in the Billion Dollar Babies era. And but it was all kinds of things. You talk about uh, musicians don't get paid to
Hmm.
play. You play because you love it. You get
True.
paid because you have to travel all your life. And so if you went over to Glenn's room at the hotel, he would have a one of Alice's top hats at the other end of the room, and he'd have a bunch of decks of cards, and he would be flipping the cards, and they'd fly through the air, and most of them would land in that hat. Uh, and if you went over to Alice's room, then he would have uh, people all lined up to go down to some local place to play ping pong. There was a lot of trying to, now it's the way Alice works is, his day is full. He gets up early, plays golf. They pull a car along behind the tour bus,
Hmm.
and a lot of people assume that, oh, well, his wife likes to go shopping. Well, it's Alice that drives the car to the nearest mall and shops. And then he'll go to a movie in the afternoon. And then he will do interviews. And then he'll go back to his hotel room and read the Bible and take a power nap. And then he'll come down to the venue and watch on a laptop. He'll watch these crazy uh, uh, Japanese action films, all karate stuff and, magical people flying through the air and all that. And then he'll throw knives at a board that has pictures of the touring band on it, and he'll do the show, and like, okay, day after. Alice is one of those personalities. He has, I mean, he can vary it,
But
but if
creature of
he doesn't
habit.
have other plans, then that's how it goes. That's
That's
how
how
his
he
day goes.
operates. Creature of
But he
habit.
also gets out on the street and walks around by himself. He has no qualms about that, but he can hardly walk a block without two or three groups of people asking for selfies, and he's very accommodating.
You know,
And that's where my personality, I'm better off. I'm happier just standing back and letting that happen, than once in a while Alice will say, "Hey, this is Dennis, get him in here." It's like, well, you don't really need to do that.
you know what you and Alice have in common because I was lucky enough to actually get beaten from Alice in poker, sit on the bus, play him face to face. Um,
Okay.
and meet him. But what you guys have in common, and I'm not a poker player, I'm like you. I just did it, and I antagonize people. I don't know if Alice got my, and I go, oh, you think you're gonna beat me? And I'm like a wise ass, but he's a very, when you take away the Alice guy, and as you and I are talking, and the Dennis Dunaway, the master of bass, which you are, I hail you, but as a person, just us talking, and Alice too. Two really humble guys, you guys are, and I could see the connection. And you guys are just two great cats like that when you take away everything you guys have accomplished.
Well, there are, I mean, that's just our personalities
Yeah.
generally, but also, Glenn Buxton whittled everybody down for every little thing. It's almost like Don Rickles. If you met him,
Was he? Was he like
you'd
that?
be, no, I mean, you would, if you met Don Rickles and he didn't insult you, you would feel, you know, shunned or something.
Oh,
You
yeah.
you expected to be, and Glenn was like that too. So that keeps you humble, but also let's face it, it looks like we were this big, gigantic, even when we were selling out Madison Square Garden back then because of our androgynous look. I would estimate maybe 30% of the people there, mostly guys, were ready to beat us up in the parking lot. They only came because their girlfriend wanted to.
It's funny. It's
We
funny when
had we had tough times. I mean, we had we would play in LA, and people would line up at the exits screaming insults at us, and it was scary. If we were, out on the street, we would be challenged a lot
Wow.
verbally and and you never knew when it was going to escalate into something more serious.
And
Uh,
back then, it was the days where you dressed up you to the max in the daytime. You were the guy on stage. You dressed like
yeah,
that
yeah.
off stage
Yeah, yeah. We were out to promote the band at all times,
at
and
all
even in
times.
broad daylight, we looked like the previous night's hooker or something, I
Yeah,
think.
I think Barney's Beanery back in the day, they used to be like real racist. They had the sign, over there hanging out, like they would not let, you know,
Oh,
um,
I didn't know that.
oh yeah,
Well,
back in the day.
hey, let's face it, here, and that was always puzzled me. Here we are in Hollyweird,
Hmm.
and we look too feminine for.
Right?
Come on, hello.
I'm the most strangest place. I remember Roxy and I got a job at Playmates on Wilcox and Hollywood Boulevard. And there was a guy that would come in dressed like with a fedora, like from the 40s. And his goal in life, he would talk to me all the time. And me and Ryan, this is right before Ryan got the Alice Cooper gig. He was auditioning, and me and him had a band together. And we were playing with Gilby in between Gilby Clark, formerly of Guns N' Roses. So anyway, this guy would come into Playmates, and he might have been in his late 60s, at this time, but I'm 24, 23. And his goal in life, he's talked to me. My best friend was Mae West, and my goal is to get an operation, and I'm going to look like her. And I have it somewhere on video because I would have a camcorder, and I'm like, well, and I go, this is Hollywood. This is the craziest place. I go to Ryan. I go, this is crazy. This guy wants his goal is to be Mae West, and he looks like Bud Abbott. I go, this is crazy. But those were crazy
Well, there
stories.
used to be this place, an ice cream place right down where now there's this big mega building in LA, but it used to be CC Brown's ice cream parlor.
Mhm.
And Cindy and I would go there and and the kids would come out and take your order. It was a family business and it seemed so wholesome for the middle of Hollywood. And then we went there one time late, just before they were closing, because usually we went for lunch or whatever. And uh, and the guy who we had gotten to think of as this old-fashioned regular guy who has owned this store, this shop forever, now the guy's in full, ready to go out. I mean, he's all he had to do is put on his wig and walk out the door in his dress and
That was it. They really lived it. That was Hollywood. That
and
was it.
hey, well, more power to him. It was
Exactly. Exactly. But that was just my first enter from a kid from Brooklyn. Oh, I grew up where Goodfellas was, so I was like, whoa, this is it. So now you got the record coming out. It'll be out July. It's produced by, for everybody to know and listen to. I'm going to put links down below. Bob Ezrin is the producer of this. He's your George Martin, Bob Ezrin.
yeah,
He's like the George Martin of Alice Cooper, basically.
yeah, yeah. The only difference is George Martin had produced a lot before he met the Beatles.
True. That is true.
Bob Ezrin never produced anything when we met him.
That's true. So meeting Bob Ezrin for the first time, what was that whole story about?
He was the little kid. Hey, can we take a little break here?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Or if you want, we could do another one if you have something to do,
No, no, no,
Okay,
no. Just give me
go ahead.
30 seconds.
Okay.
I'm back.
As you took that break, we're about to talk, ask you about your meeting with Bob Ezrin, but
Yeah.
as you took the break, I have Eric Singer just text me. He goes, "What about DD?" Because he's a big fan, and he had a whole bunch of questions for you, and he loves your bass playing, your groove. You know Eric Singer, right? Have you?
Yes.
Okay, well
Yeah, I
he's
met him actually. My band, the Dennis Dunaway Project, opened for Alice up in, I think it was in Scranton or Wilkes Barre, somewhere in on the East Coast, and I and the roadies didn't know who I was,
hmm,
uh, but so we, Eric and I went outside. I I don't know if he's having a smoke or what, but I went out with him and we were chatting. And then he went back in, and then the security guards wouldn't let me back in. I'm like, hey, I'm in the opening band and we're going to go on pretty soon. Yeah, right, buddy. And I had to go around the front, and I didn't have a ticket to get in, but I had to finagle my way back in and walk through the crowd to get to the stage to perform.
funny. It's funny.
Our keyboard guy was so mad. He was ready to start busting heads. He said, you're not getting the respect you need." And I said, "Hey, don't worry about it. We're going to play to one of our biggest audiences here, and it's all good."
It's all good. Yeah, yeah. He's texting right now. Just that every time you hear "Bing," that's him texting me. He says, "Oh, ask him this, ask him that." He has a whole slew. He's like, as
Oh,
much.
what? Oh, I also saw him. He was playing. Uh, they were practicing Halo of Flies at a sound check. This was another gig. Blue Cooper opening for Alice. Trying to remember where it was. Cleveland, I think. And so I was on because Chuck hadn't arrived yet, and so I was. They asked me if I would play bass, so he could practice Halo of Flies, and so we were actually jamming together that day.
He had a question. He just actually texted right here. He's like, because he always wanted to know. He's like, I have to know Alan Schwartzberg, the drummer who played on tracks with Alice, if he ever played. If that's him on Muscle of Love. And that was his question. He's like asking me.
That I don't know. The only song that Neil didn't play on Muscle of Love album was Crazy Little Child. And that's because Jack Richardson was a jazzy bass player. Actually, he played with uh, the Unicorn song, the Irish Rovers. He was in the
Mhm.
band, and then he decided to become a producer. Uh, but um, but this latest reissue, the anniversary reissue of Muscle of Love,
Yeah.
includes a bonus track, which is Neil playing. It's his drumming on that song, "Crazy Little Child,"
Oh,
which I
wow.
like more because it's there's very little difference between the two, other than the feel is a little bit more uh, peppy on the drummer that came in, and I'm not sure who it was, so I can't answer Eric's question. It quite possibly is who he's talking about. But with Neil, we made it a bit more of a rock feel. But both of them are good. But you can actually hear Neil drumming on it.
Neil is one of those cats where it's a certain groove and swing like you have the originals. You can't repeat, you can't just copy it. It's just that feel. There's certain tones like
Swing feel. It's
Steven Adler on Appetite, Charlie Watts for the Stones. There's certain drummers, Stan Lynch of the Heartbreakers, There's these drummers where the band changes when you change that guy in the back.
right. And you've been very complimentary about my bass playing, which I'm thank you.
Oh, come on.
Uh, but I always look at it like you can't compliment bass or drums without complimenting both, because they work together as such a unit.
Mhm.
And but you mentioned swing. That's what almost every one of the classic Alice songs has, a swing feel.
Yeah.
And when you try to turn it into a heavier song by adding more of a metal bass drum to it or something, it throws everything off. All of a
It's
sudden, it just doesn't move right. So, and there's a lot of swing on this new album too. So that's just how we play. Neil goes all the way back. Gene Krupa was his hero, and uh, who was the Let There Be Drums guy, Sandy Nelson.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, and me, it goes back to even like, the doo-wop and stuff. But generally, we learned blues roots. I learned from Bill Wyman of the Stones. I'd go over to
Yeah.
Glenn's house and we would drop the needle on the record, and Glenn would help me, flush out those notes, and it was blues roots. And so I played blues rooted a lot of the early stuff, and that's the other thing about this Revenge of Alice Cooper album. As it gets more and more toward the end, it starts to get more into those kind of feel that we did in the early days when we were the Spiders, which is great. But then when I heard the Yardbirds, Paul Samwell Smith was just as every bit as uh, progressive on bass as the guitar players that overshadow him. And I'm going, oh my God, the bass doesn't just have to play blues rooted stuff. But most everything that I ever play has that in it. I just try to push it to somewhere else.
It's very creative. You move the bass line in a different direction. You almost do it with James Jamerson when you listen to those Motown, the James Jamersons, a song like Heat Wave or something. What the bass is grooving and moving. And
James Jamerson, the hook. He
the
played
hook,
one finger. That
which is
makes it
crazy.
that makes it even more unbelievable. But uh, you know, uh, Your Love Keeps Lifting Me Higher and Higher, Jackie Wilson song. So that's the same kind of chord progression that 90% of 50 songs are. That same four chord pattern, right? And almost every one of those songs, the bass follows those chords, the root note, and then they'll have a pattern within that. But then on Your Love Lifting Me Higher and Higher, James Jamerson plays the same pattern over and over, and the chords move, but the bass stays the same. And because he did that, it's so genius in its simplicity. Because he did that, it makes the chords lift above that root note, and that's the feel of the song.
Absolutely.
Uh, Yeah, you're mentioning my name with a lot of heroes, Entwistle and all those guys. It's like I feel like not worthy,
But
I
Dennis,
do
it's
I do my thing, But the other thing about this new album
mhm.
that's different than the Love It to Death and Killer era stuff is the bass. I have a more growly tone, and it's not as distinctive note for note, because the one thing I feel proud about, and this is a tip of the hat to Jack Richardson and Bob Ezrin, you could hear every note I played on those albums. But this one is a little bit more feel than actual distinctive notes on some of the songs. But it's got this underlying growl to it. So I have varied my style intentionally for this album, but to go with that, back in the days of analog recording and
Mhm.
stuff, and also back in the days with what was getting on the radio, there was a lot of mixes for very popular songs that the drums were pretty much in the background under. That's why this Live from the AstroTurf thing we did in Dallas at Good Records is so good, because you can hear what Neil's playing on songs that you could never
Mhm.
hear the drums that loud in the mix. Well, this new album, you can hear Neil up in the mix, and it makes it really extra good to me.
Are you playing your Fender? Are you doing your your bass?
Yeah, I'm playing the same Fender Billion Dollar bass, the original that I played on those albums. I'm playing a Roto Sound Swing 66 strings, and I'm playing with uh, a heavy-handed pick.
Oh, you are. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I play very hard, but I play close to the bridge so it doesn't get too raunchy. But it growls.
It growls. Jameson, his trick was the funk, the gunk is the funk. That was his slogan. Never changed the strings.
Right.
He
The
liked the
famous,
strings dead.
he's not the only one. I could never do that because I used to play so hard that I'd break strings, and then you'd have to replace them. But yeah, and the famous story where Jamerson came home and his kid was cleaning the neck on his bass, and
Yes.
oh, wait a minute, that's where the funk is.
So true. So true. Now, I mean, your bass, that's iconic. It's an iconic. That's your main bass that you do all your recordings with.
Not necessarily. It depends. Sometimes I'll get in the studio and things will be rolling
Hmm.
along, and all of a sudden Bob will say, "Wait a minute, that I can't quite get the right tone out of that bass for this song." That didn't really happen on this album. That just reminds me.
Mm,
Um, Speaking bass, back then uh, you played at low volume in the studios. And almost every single studio worth their salt had an Ampeg B15 amp,
that's right.
house amp. And that's what I recorded those albums on. And that's what I recorded this album on.
Well, that
Yeah.
was the same one like the
Ampeg,
Motown.
not the exact same amp. I mean that amp, but not the one that the record plant had,
Yeah.
or not the one that uh, Sunset Sound had.
It was like
But
what the Motown guys used to use. It's a little that little
it was the standard
yeah,
back
the
then.
standard.
It was
Yeah,
just one 15-inch speaker. The tubes and stuff
that's
for
right.
traveling, you'd unlatch the sides and turn it
Yes.
upside down so the tubes were inside the cabinet. But in the studio, you'd turn it so the tubes are up on top, visible. But yeah, so I used an Ampeg B15, so it's old school all the way. The same bass, the same strings, and the same amp.
Awesome. That's cool to know. That's cool. What a tone you get out of it. You can't make that up. That tone, that's right all there. And plus, it's all in your fingers too. The other part of it all, people don't
It
realize.
is. Michael had his distinct guitar tone, and Glenn Buxton had his distinct guitar tone, and they would be playing through different amps, and all of a sudden they decide, well, let me try your amp. Let's switch amps, and they'd switch, and without any pedals or anything, all of a sudden those amps would sound different. Because it had so much to do with how they were playing rather than the amp.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of it's all here a lot for everybody listening. It's all right here in the tips of your
All of
fingers
my
too.
tone. I am a bass chord amp. I don't, I used pedals on Sick Things and on Unfinished Suite. I
Hmm.
used a fuzz wah, but generally I just one chord to the amp because I have enough problems at it as it is, stepping on the chord or whatever. Now I go cordless, but still, I don't have pedals and stuff. All of my tone variation is done by where my hand sits on the bridge of the bass and where I pick. If I want it to be rounder, I pick closer to the neck. If I want it to be more distinct and not as fat, I pick right next to the bridge. So, and then you can use the palm of your hand to mute it and all of that. I don't really even vary the knobs on the bass much. It's all just with my hand.
Do you turn the knobs you're all the way up on your knobs on the bass when you're playing, or do you
I
keep?
go with I have a DiMarzio split pickup on the front of
Mhm.
my Fender Jazz bass and a jazz pickup next to the bridge. And I use full uh, DiMarzio and about one quarter of the jazz uh, pickup. And I vary that once in a while. I will, uh, depending if I want a rounder, more boomy sound for a ballad, say, then I'll back off the back pickup altogether and just use the front one. But I hardly ever uh, change the knobs. I get it set. What I want is I want to get it so that I can hear the pick attack
Mhm.
without losing and get as much bottom as I can and still be able to hear the pick attack. But these days, there's so much post-production technology that you can take a tiny note and make it look gigantic.
I
I mean,
know.
sound gigantic. So there's a lot of variation, but it still has mostly to do with the way Bob Ezrin produces, with how it goes down in the studio.
What is it like to work with Ezra? And I mean, he's such a huge name in the business, and you know him from the beginning. So what is it like when you're with? He's a creative guy in the studio. So tell.
Uh, Bob he learned his craft from the great Jack Richardson, the Guess Who. Jack kicked down the doors for Canadian bands to get on the radio in America. There was some taboo for that before him. Uh, and so Bob, number one, he's always shows up with full energy. It's infectious. It's like when he walks into the room, then all of a sudden you feel like something good is going to happen. He works fast in that sometimes he makes a snap decision and sticks with it when various people might disagree with him. But if you and yet he always gives everybody fair say. Like it's this recording was all of us together. Everybody blurting out their ideas and maybe even doing a little bit of a debate over it. And then we would all decide what the majority thought was the best and we'd move forward. But if we got into a thing where it started to become any sign of a deadlock, Bob would jump in and say, "We're doing it that way." Okay, you got a deadline. Uh, Records don't sell like they did back then when you had a Warner Brothers or whatever coming in with a giant budget, because the market just is different now, especially for hard rock.
Yeah.
But like Alice says, we're the outlaws again. We were the outlaws in the beginning and we're the outlaws again. But I reminded him that I married the drummer's sister, so we're also in-laws.
I forgot. I totally forgot that your wife was. That's right. I totally. You just reminded me.
Yeah, Sydney did all of the costumes.
That's
Uh,
right.
yeah, and she also did all of the therapy.
That's right. I had Neil on the show, and a lot of a fun conversation a while back. And I was just thinking while you were coming on, I go, man, it would be great to have the rhythm section talk together and share the war stories with them together. And I didn't think
Uh,
about it, but we have to do one like that. I forgot one thing. I forgot when you guys did your break. Okay. And I truly don't know this, Dennis. I'm not like, the internet knows everything, but while you're here, I was always curious when you guys went on your way, Alice and he took his break and you guys were continuing and you did Battle Axe, you did the band, the name change was Billion Dollar Babies. That name changed,
right,
right? And then, but originally the band's name was Alice Cooper. That was the band's name before
right.
he became Alice, like that. So then in that way you had to rebrand yourself. What was going on with the name and how did that
Well, we
all
thought
change?
the Battle Axe album we thought was going to be the next Alice Cooper album.
Okay.
So Neil and Michael and I were working on it, and then more and more it became slowly evident. I was the last to finally come to terms with Alice wasn't going to show up. And so then all these advertisements were on the radio with our music and no mention that it wasn't the original band. And we're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? we've designed this whole big stage, and we've got people working on building the stage, and we've got these, and then all of a sudden all of our mailboxes were getting legal things and all of a sudden uh, it was a major distraction from us getting that album done. And we even auditioned a singer, once we realized Alice wasn't taking calls and all that. We even auditioned a singer who was the lead in Jesus Christ Superstar on Broadway.
Wow.
And he had a great voice, but it was Broadway. It wasn't rock and roll. Also, the other thing about that is he had a necklace made out of gold. The chain was made out of little nails, and then there was a crucifix. And I said, "Wow, that crucifix, that's looks like Salvador Dali." He said, "Salvador Dali gave it to me." Yeah. But
Wow.
anyway, so we finally decided Michael had to sing, and now all of a sudden you've got lawyers and you've got all kinds of stuff going on, and uh, uh, so we we started having legal talks with a lawyer in New York City, and we decided to use Billion Dollar Babies because we wanted people to still have a clue that it was us.
Or
The problem was nobody wanted to hire us because, wait a minute, you're not the Alice Cooper group. The Alice Cooper group are touring right now. And we're like, no, well, we're Alice Cooper, but the singer is touring right now. Well, that's not going to work. How am I supposed to advertise that? And then we had this gigantic stage, uh, and so we couldn't open for anybody. Nobody wanted to follow that.
yeah.
And we couldn't headline because there was confusion as to who Alice Cooper was at that point.
So that was it.
It was a financial disaster. We did 4 shows and and spent a fortune to do it, and I felt, you know, to be honest, I felt like we had been abandoned by our fans, because if fans would have said, "Oh, well, this isn't the Alice Cooper group. We want the real group, or we're not going to buy tickets," then we would have continued. Warner Brothers would have come back. We were still under contract management wise and to the record company. But but that didn't happen.
Yeah.
In fact, all we read about was how we refused to do theatrics.
So
And
the band name became the guy, Alice Cooper. Vince became Alice Cooper basically at that point.
yeah,
That's
Willie sort of had it had become a dual, like a two-headed snake before that, because Alice Cooper was an individual and the band name. So it was both things, but people are saying, "Oh, you can't do that." Well, hey, come on, what about Manfred Mann? There were bands that had
true. True.
things like that
Yeah.
going.
True.
Uh, it, but at one point, our management talked to a publicist, and they said, "Do you know how we should promote this?" And they said, "Well, I know how to promote one person. I don't know how to promote five." So then it went that direction. And also the other factor was that, we created Alice. We came up with the ideas. Doing theatrics was my idea. Doing executions was my idea. That I had a hard sell to talk the band into doing that. Alice's makeup was my idea. The glam look was, well, Cindy had mostly to do with that, but still. Um, so we created this character that overshadowed our music even. We would work our butts off to write a song for the Snake, and we came up with this bump and grind feel for Is It My Body, and be very proud and couldn't wait for people to hear this new song that we wrote, and they'd write about the Snake.
It's incredible. It's incredible. You had the vision that you guys had this vision of what to do and to build up the Frankenstein monster. It's almost like you built up the Frankenstein monster and unleashed, you know?
Well, we had major help from our management. I mean, uh, Joe Greenberg and Shep Gordon, the very first time they saw us, people were we emptied this room full of people in a matter of minutes. And they're going, oh, wait a minute. There's something powerful going on here. We just have to harness it. It's like Frankenstein and the
Yeah,
monster, right?
yeah, yeah.
And so we had management that, and also, like Bob Ezrin never produced anybody. Well, they never managed anybody before us. So this whole thing was like just a bunch of people with this vision, and we were out to make it happen no matter what. It's like everything was against us. We had everybody in LA we were the brunt of their jokes, and then later when we made it, then all of a sudden everybody, oh, I supported the boys all along, it's like,
This is why I give you the recognition. I say, not only the bass playing, that's a whole nother thing, but in the rhythm section between you two, you Neil, but just the creative part, just the vision, just to do all this, even to think of a concept. It's just how magical, and how Bob Ezrin in the beginning, you guys were all building this ship together. And then,
yeah. We were also lucky that we had Warner Brothers, but that's also because of management. We had artistic control of our
mm,
album covers, where other bands wouldn't know what their album cover was going to be till it was released, basically. But Warner Brothers was good. So, and I don't mean to make it sound like I'm the genius behind it all. I wasn't. I was the crusader. I was the guy that was always pushing, and Alice would always be on my side. So, we were a force. But, uh, but Neil, Michael, and Glenn were on board. They came up with as many of the theatrical ideas, and they were gung ho for it. It wasn't like we were telling them what to do or anything. It was definitely a full collaboration on every aspect. All we talked about was the band. What are we going to wear? What are we going to do on this song? How are we going to follow the Stooges? How are we going to follow the Stooges? We're going to hang our singer. That's why
that's
that
great.
happened.
Come
That's
on.
why that happened. We knew we couldn't outpower them.
That's great. And I always say this to everybody when I talk to them, when you mentioned the Stooges, Alice Cooper is not a metal band. I go, they were a rock and roll band, like from the streets. Like really, when you hear them, because you were playing with the Stooges and all this, you took it all and mashed it together.
The Detroit, when we were in LA, we were very artsy, you
Hmm.
know, and we and before that we were a really tight cover band in Phoenix. But all of a sudden we decided we were going to do something that nobody else had ever done, and we did. But it was, it was had a limited appeal, uh, so much so that we didn't have any food on our table. But Frank Zappa liked us. Uh, and once the Mothers had their stamp of approval, and our first tour was with the Mothers of Invention, uh, we learned a lot. We saw what they were doing. And even though people say, oh, well, Zappa influenced us, our theatrics and everything, that's not true. We were doing things that would be similar to what the Mothers were doing, like uh, Don Preston would drink a beaker of water with dry ice in it. So smoke would be coming out, and then he'd do a Jekyll and Hyde thing on stage. But what they were doing was humorous. What we were doing had humor in it, except we were delivering it with this very serious attitude. And therefore, it came off very different. So there was a lot of things like that. But when we landed in Detroit, that's not going to cut it. Detroit was fist in the air on every song. If you did a ballad, there would be a line at the men's room, or they'd
Yeah,
run you out of town with a tire iron.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So okay, but those Motor City Bad Boys took us kind of under their wings in a competitive way. We played a lot of festivals together, uh, you know, and we roughed up our sound, our direction of our sound. You know, Black Juju and stuff was a tougher approach. Even though we knew we couldn't outpower them, the Stooges would just nail you to the wall, and so would MC5, and that was uh,
Wow.
you couldn't turn up the amps any louder than they already had them.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, Wayne Cream. I actually had the opportunity, and this is really quick. I'll tell you, when we were jamming at the Baked Potato, I don't know if I told you last time, and if I did, cut me off, or if you forgot, but we were rehearsing. It was one day we do every Tuesday at the Baked Potato, the jam band. And this time it was Clem Burke from Blondie on drums, me on bass, Gilby on guitar, and it was Wayne Kramer. And we were learning.
A
um,
super group right
it was
there.
a super group, except for me. All they needed you to get the record deal, but John Randy, I was going through a divorce, and in between, I was playing bass for Dee Dee Ramone because he switched for guitar. But anyway, I was out of my mind this time, and this is around the time like Caligo would come over and watch my son for me, and she was like babysitting my son when I'd go to these shows playing for Dee Dee Ramone. But anyway, um, Don Randy goes, "You'll love my friend. He's just like you, East Coast guy. You'll love him." And I'm trying to learn the song. It was the Spinners, "I Get Around" with Wayne Kramer, and it was really, I'm getting my groove. But the guy keeps talking to me, "Never get married, kid. Da 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 da. These women, da da da." And then I went to Clem, who just recently passed away. He was a cool cat. I go, Clem, I'm trying to learn these songs.
Drummer too.
Oh, great drummer, like a Keith Moon, and it's just, oh, he was just incredible.
Like
And
if Keith Moon was a metronome.
yes, yeah, exactly. And I tell Clem, I go, "I love Don's friend, but I go, he's busting my chops. I can't get rid of him." He goes, "You know who that is, Stefan?" And I go, "Who?" He goes, "It's Hal Blaine." I go, "Oh, he could stay." Who's Hal Blaine?
Oh my God.
I didn't realize it. So yeah,
Well,
that was
they weren't facially recognized. That
no, they weren't.
it was
No,
just Carol Kay's. Carol Kay's
the bass
inducted
player. She's the bassist
finally
in the
inducted
Hall of
into the
Fame,
Rock and Roll Hall of
the
Fame. Yeah,
Rock and Roll Hall of
but
Fame.
you've mentioned Dee Dee a couple times. I got to tell you my story. I once went somehow ended up at a person's house who was a big Ramones fan. In fact, like a lot of their fans, he called himself Roger Rocker, uh, but Roger Ramone.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but anyway, so I'm at his house and he wants to show me his basement, his collection. And I go down there and he has one of Dee Dee's basses hanging on the wall above the fireplace in the basement. And the strings are rusty and the neck is warping. And I'm going, what are you doing here, man? This isn't right. And so I spent a whole afternoon giving this guy a lecture about taking care of this instrument. And I took it all apart. I took the tuning keys
Oh,
off.
you
They had
did.
rust on them. And, I didn't want to, I wanted to keep everything original, but I just wanted to get the rust off and all of that and straighten the neck. Thank God I got to it before it got too bad to correct and straighten the neck, put new strings on it. And this guy had put some decals on it, and I got those off of there. And then shortly after that, there was the Joey Ramone benefit in New York City at Webster Hall.
Hmm.
And one of the bands playing was our friends, the Sick Bucks, with Tish and Snooky singing.
I remember Manic Panic. Yeah, yeah.
Panic, Panic, yeah. Uh, and so I sat in with them and we did a couple of Ramones songs, uh, Blitzkrieg Bop and
Hmm.
something else. And I played Dee Dee's bass.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
It's so funny you mentioned that because at the time when I was playing with him, and it was funny, I'd have to go pick him up, and then Calico was with me. I go, "Calico, you got to watch my son for me," and he'd get in the car. "Hello." I don't think he realized it was Alice's daughter, and then he would say something, and when he'd want to end the conversation, he goes, "They're trying to kill me," and it was a running joke between me and Calico. I go, "Calico," I go, "He's out of his mind." I go, "He's crazy," and it was just he was the movie Ed Wood, the Johnny Depp character who played Ed Wood, and Bela Lugosi, he was my Lugosi. He would call me up, and I'm like last second rehearsals I had to have. And then Calico was in LA, and I go, Calico, could you do me a favor? Because my son was little, and I go, will you watch Gyasi for me? And she'd come over, and she was a lifesaver. Else I would not have that gig. But right here, this was Dee Dee's last guitar, and this was the GMP that Ryan Roxy got me an endorsement with, and he turned me on to this. And this one was designed by Gilby. It was called the Pawn Shop, but Dee Dee sanded this out himself. These are the actual strings with Dee Dee. So before he died, we played a show at the El Rey Theater, and before he passed away, we were supposed to play Washington, Seattle, and he goes, "You better hold on to it. You never know what's going to happen." And I think he knew he was checking out. He was 49, going to be 50, and
No.
he ended up. We played our last show. We did 3 songs. Slim Jim Phantom played drums, and then something was happening with Marky Ramone, and I was, I'm East Coast. He said something about my family, Marky, and I started trouble. Then, I was a troublemaker. I'll cut this out of the show, but anyway, Dee Dee passed away, and it's almost like he left me a phone message. "You're my friend. I love you. I'll protect you forever." But I didn't want to call him back because he was too much. He was crazy that day, and I didn't realize he checked out. He ended up buying a bunch of dope. Shot
Checked out too soon.
checked
Rock
out
and
too
roll
soon.
tragedy. There's too many of them.
And you know
All
what
the
the sad thing, Dennis?
way.
I have the contracts for our shows, the last shows. We weren't making no money. You could see it, 1,200 for the whole band. He was doing it just for doing it. And then he goes, "When I'm gone, they'll really care." He always said that to me. Sad. It's sad. That's why now above ground
Well,
that you're here, and that's
okay. On a more positive
on a
note,
positive note.
uh, so I don't know if you've seen Cold Cold Coffin that Calico is in. It's
Yeah.
a
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, oh my God, she's so funny. What a character. Uh, so I play the old eccentric guy that owns a castle, and then she's the young gold digger wife, right? And so uh, I'm supposed to be getting married to her in this
Oh,
film. It's like a short horror movie that's actually a music video. We call it a rock opera. And anyway, so I'm staring at her. So we're getting our wedding vows from a priest. And so the camera's over my shoulder for her facial expression and vice versa, right? So she delivers her line to me. And then when it's time for me to deliver my line, she's looking cross-eyed and sticking her tongue out and everything. And I'm trying not to laugh.
Calico's so funny. She really could be on Saturday Night Live. She is really a talented girl. Very
Oh,
funny, great
oh,
singer.
they could use her.
It's not
I
the
mean, I
same.
like SNL. I still watch it, and I disagree with people that say it sucks these days. But Calico would be definitely great on there.
She would nail it. Now, another thing, I want to really, and I'll let you go in a sec. From your early days, the Alice days and all this with Bob Ezrin, but another guy who came from the Bob Ezrin, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jack Douglas. Was he the engineer for Bob?
For
Or
Muscle of Love, yeah.
okay, okay.
Jack also did Neil's Platinum God album. That's who we were recording with during the time off that the Alice Cooper group had at the record plant in New York City. John
Mm,
Lennon was also there. John, somebody came over to our studio. It was just Neil, Mike Marconi, and I laying down tracks with Jack Douglas in the control room. And somebody came in and said, John needs a bass player. Uh, can you play bass for him? And I'm like, well, I'm working on this for Neil now. I have a spare bass I can loan you if that would help. So they took my bass, and years later, decades later, I found out that it was our friend Rockin' Reggie who helped us write Billion Dollar Baby song, uh, who played my bass on John's album.
no way.
And so and so um, I found out he's coming in the studio, and somebody comes and says, "Hey, do you play bass? John Lennon needs a bass player." And he said, "For John Lennon, I play bass. Do you have a bass?" And then they came over and got my bass, but I had no idea it was our friend who did it for decades after that. I still until I found out,
Oh,
and then and because Rockin' Reggie was just terrible on the internet, I would send him a thing saying, "Hey, Rockin', I saw that you played my bass on John's album, the rock and roll album. And what songs did you play it on?" And it'd be like 3 weeks later, he'd send me a message that said, "Yes, I played on John's album." And that would be it, right? So now, fast forward another couple decades, and I'm friends with May Pang, right?
yeah, yeah.
And I don't talk about John, at that point. I would just be friends with her and all that, and my wife and I. And so we were at a party actually over at Tish and Snooky's house, and the food was in one room, and everybody had gotten their food and kind of migrated to other rooms of the house, but May was there. And so then I brought this story up, and she said, "Oh, I was there. I can tell you what songs your bass was on." She said, "Look under the credits, the production credits of that album. If it says Spector and Lennon, then your bass isn't on it. That's about 6 songs. And the other 6 songs that just say produced by John Lennon, your bass is on all of those, about 6 other songs." So anyway, a long time before I finally found out what had happened way back then.
So the legend, so the bass, your Master Fender bass, that's the bass.
This was a different bass. This
Okay.
was one of my white basses, probably the one that I used on Hello Hooray and Billion Dollar Babies, the song.
Do you still have that bass?
Yeah. In fact, I played, had gone to May Pang's birthday parties in New York City. And it's like all of these great musicians get up and perform. And I took that bass and I showed it to May and I played it that night. And she was semi excited, I guess. She's not a bass player, but she said she was glad to see it again.
I'm excited because I love this story. I'm going to make a clip out of this. And not only that, is because that album, that Lennon album, is one of my favorite albums. I love that album too.
Oh wow.
It's
Oh wow. Rockin' Reggie unfortunately isn't doing so well these days, but I do have a recording I did with him. We were just in Nashville at some hotel in the lobby, and I interviewed him on my phone, and he talks about some great things about him knowing John Lennon and working with him.
fantastic. Those are fantastic stories. I had the honor of having May on the show too, and she's a very, very sweet lady. Always answers my
It's
text
great.
right away.
Everybody loves May Pang.
She's a touring machine with her gallery, the book. She's out there performing all this. Great. These are great stories, and I love all these stories. So Bob Ezrin, Jack Douglas came from his world, and then look what happened to Jack. He just became psh, right.
Jack, okay, so Jack was the engineer, and Bob Ezrin had gotten some other job with some other group production job, and after he had already locked into that, he was approached by Aerosmith. They wanted Bob Ezrin to produce Aerosmith,
Oh, I didn't
and
know
Bob's
that.
like, "Well, I can't do it." And so then he's at the record plant, and he said, "Jack, why don't you produce Aerosmith?" And Jack's like, "Oh man, I'm an engineer. I don't know if I'm ready for that." So Bob said, "Okay, let's go for a ride." And Bob was driving the car, and they drove around Central Park, around and around Central Park. And Bob told him, "You can do this. You can do it. I can recommend you, and you have the talent, and you can do it." And then look what happened.
History of rock and roll, the full circle, man. Dennis, I love these stories, man. You and I could talk for you for a long time, so I'm gonna let you go. I'm not. I mean, there's so much to talk about, but I'm so happy that The Revenge of Alice Cooper. I'm happy that this record is coming out, even though it's way early, but it's coming out in July. I'm going to put the links to pre-order. It's selling now. I mean, I hope if the fans out there, everybody watching, post in the comments. You want to see the original? Write it here, light it up, order the music, get the vinyl, and then write to Dennis and harass him. Tell him that you were listening to this show right here with ADIKA. But man, it's so great having you here. I hope it wasn't too long. I know your wife's probably, you still talking to this guy? I'm sorry.
She's used to it. I'm doing nothing but interviews since this news came out. Hey, we've been talking a lot about Ryan. You know, we might plug his "I'm Better Than You" song that he just released. Yeah.
Let's put it right here. Hey, Ryan, right here. Everybody click up here. I'll put a link, put it right there.
Right.
Too.
Talk to you later,
Dennis, thank you for your time again, my man. You be good.
All right. You too.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for being a Patreon. Thank you for being a members only right here on Artist on Record. We appreciate the support and the love. We'll catch you all later. Bye-bye. As always, post your comments down below. We always love to hear from you. And don't forget, we're streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, on YouTube too. Take us on the road. Take us wherever you're going. Vacation, cleaning the house. Listen to Artist on Record, the rock and roll podcast.